I hope you're using the hashtag Throwback Thursday because today is Thursday and that's what you're supposed to do, right? But also on Thursdays on my channel, I like to do something where we pay tribute or throw back to the games that made us fall in love with gaming to begin with. And if you're a racing head, you're probably gonna really like this episode because we're gonna be running through the history of Need for Speed. That's right. One of the best racing game series of all time. But before I start, make sure that you smash that like button. Check out the cards in the top right hand corner of this video. You won't be disappointed. There's a playlist to other Throwback Thursdays. Drop a comment below and let me know what video you'd like to be seeing next week. And make sure that you subscribe for more of these because they're going to be here every single week. I just want to give a huge thank you to LG for helping me make this video happen. I'm using the brand new LG G4 to shoot all links in this video so that you can see how insane the camera is. It has a 16 megapixel back camera with a full manual mode if you want to take photographs, so you'll be impressed if you're a photographer. Go check out the cards in the top right hand corner of this video to find out more about the phone. The Need for Speed was launched in 1994. It was originally released for the 3DO with a version on PC, which is probably the version that we all played unless you happen to own a 3DO for some reason. The PC version was launched in 1995, and there were both PlayStation and Sega Saturn versions that were released in 1996. This was a unique Need for Speed because it was the most realistic, if you'd like, because it focused a lot on simulation, especially when it came to the car handling. If you happen to have a copy of the game lying around that you can play, try it out. There's word that it really lives up to its simulation hype. Need for Speed 2 was launched in 1997. This is the first time the game featured country-themed tracks that stretched all the way from Australia, Asia, Europe, all the way through to North America. The track design was also open-ended, which means that there were more pathways to access the track. It's kind of a staple in games right now, but you could do shortcuts through the track. Fun fact, it was also the first game on PlayStation when it was launched to take advantage of the DualShock controller. Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit. Now this was a game. It was launched in 1998, the same year as Half-Life, but was definitely the best racing game that was launched that year. They're very lucky that Half-Life didn't have any vehicular combat. This was the first time that Need for Speed included police chases, and it also had a really cool split screen mode, which I think is really important for a racing title, and they ditched this later on for some silly reason. In 1999, only just a year later, Need for Speed High Stakes or Road Challenge was launched. It was called Road Challenge in Europe and Brazil and High Stakes in North America and Australia. The game introduced a whole bunch of different types of gameplay like High Stakes, Time Trap, Career, and Getaway. This is the first time players could actually upgrade their cars. Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed or Porsche 2000 was launched in, surprise, the year 2000, just after Y2K. It claimed to be the most realistic Need for Speed to date, but that fact is debatable, seeing as though the first was so good. And also, it didn't have a split screen mode, which, as you know, for me is a big mistake. Deep into the 2000s, in 2002 we got Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. It was launched on the Xbox, GameCube, and PC. A whole different version was developed for PlayStation by Black Box Games. Hot Pursuit 2 used Need for Speed 3 as inspiration, but unlike Need for Speed 3, which used things like spike strips and helicopters that you could call in to eliminate your opponents if you played as the police, all you had to do was tap your opponent, which kinda sucks. A new era for Need for Speed came about in 2003 with the release of Need for Speed Underground. They really pushed the graphics with this one, which, if you're looking back, might not seem very good, but it was one of the best looking racing games at the time. It focused more on street racing as opposed to the more professional racing like in other titles with traditional cars. It was an arcade racer that really changed the game. There were a bunch of really sick modes like sprint, drag, and drift. This was also the first game in Need for Speed to have a narrative. It's also important to note that Need for Speed at this stage had established police chases as a staple in the last couple of games, and arguably one of the best features of those games, so it was kind of frowned upon when it was excluded from Underground, but people fell in love with it anyway. In 2004, Need for Speed Underground 2 was launched. The game introduced SUVs into the series, and they really amped up the customization in this one. Come on, this is the thing that we really wanted. And you could do some hectic mods to your engine, you could upgrade your nitros, and you could fix up your suspension as well. Need for Speed Most Wanted came out in 2005. It was one of the first games that was launched on the Xbox 360, and it was also released for pretty much every other console and PC, including the Nintendo DS. The game was free roaming and open world, and police chases came to be a part of the whole thing. The story mode was a little lame because they included a whole bunch of live action stuff in the cinematics. Despite this, it was actually a very cool game. Most Wanted got some really sick reviews and is one of the better Need for Speed titles. This isn't the Need for Speed that came out in 2012, we're still getting there, that's the reboot. Need for Speed Carbon was released in 2006. There wasn't any drag racing in this version, but instead it was replaced with something called Canyon Duel, where players would have to overtake each other, and if you could remain in the front for 10 seconds, you automatically win. In 2007, Need for Speed Pro Street was released. It's probably most notable because they included realistic damage, and they try to do a more simulation type racing. There was no open world though, just the normal traditional racing tracks that you see in most of the other games. In 2008, Need for Speed Undercover was released, and it was okay. Although the game got a worse review than Pro Street, the developers were adamant that having a longer development cycle, and by going back to the roots of Need for Speed as a series, they'd produce a better game. They were wrong. Need for Speed went a whole new direction in 2009 with Need for Speed Shift. It was developed by Slightly Mad Studios and had over 60 cars and 19 tracks. Some of them were actually licensed. It was insane because the cockpit mode in the game was trying to emulate what it felt like to be in a real racing cockpit with intense motion blur and camera shaking. I have a special place in my heart for Need for Speed Shift. Need for Speed Nitro was launched in 2009 only on the Nintendo DS and Wii. It was pretty much an arcade game like all the others, but to be honest, I don't know many people who played Need for Speed on the DS or the Wii. Any of you guys played Need for Speed Nitro? Let me know in the comments below. In 2010, Need for Speed tried something a little different. Need for Speed World was released. It was a free-to-play MMO racing game that was exclusively available on PC. It focused on the world of illegal racing, added a whole bunch of police chases, and had elements from a lot of the other games, including Most Wanted and Carbon. The game shut down its servers on the 14th of July 2015, and I don't think too many people complained. Hot Pursuit was released in 2010. This was the remake of the original Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. It won plenty of awards and seemed to really go back to the reason a lot of people play the Need for Speed in the first place. The arcade racing was on point and the graphics were extraordinarily slick, and the game ran at a beautiful 60 frames per second. They removed customization, which I think was a very important and smart move. They needed to take that energy and focus it more on the gameplay and bring it back to what it was supposed to be, just throwing in racing with cops and including over 60 cars. Shift 2 Unleashed was launched in 2011, and it was a direct sequel to Need for Speed Shift, which was also developed by Slightly Mad Studios. They had that famous in-game helmet camera to make the cockpit really intense, and included an exciting career mode and added night racing. You could also tune your car, and there were more than 140 different cars to choose from. It was damn cool. Need for Speed The Run was launched in 2011 and tried to bring back the whole idea of street racing. There was a story mode that allowed you to race all the way from San Francisco to New York. Much to everyone's dismay, this is also the first game that Need for Speed brought in quick time events. You could also get onto your feet, get out of your car and run around, which was also a first and pretty crazy. It was also the first game that wasn't a shooter to run on the DICE Frostbite engine too. There are a ton of real world cars, and you can unlock these cars by gaining experience points and just competing in the events. Need for Speed Most Wanted was launched in 2012 by the genius minds at Criterion Games. Criterion worked on the Burnout series, and we all know Burnout was probably one of the best racing series of all time. It was most notable for having open world racing with the cars available from the get-go, hidden in different locations. And they ditched the whole idea of a story, thankfully. We just want to get behind the wheel and go. You could totally upgrade your car on this one and improve your tires, your nitrous, your bodywork, and even the chassis. Need for Speed Rivals skidded onto our consoles in 2013, riding on the spirit of Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. It was pretty much the same thing, it was updated, and it was hella fun. Need for Speed No Limits was released in 2015 for iOS and Android. Maybe I should do that one and feature it on my weekly mobile games. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. It was also the first Need for Speed that was made exclusively for mobile. Need for Speed is coming out again this year as a complete reboot. They're just dropping the third. It will just be called Need for Speed. It was announced in May, and maybe 2015 will be the year of Need for Speed all over again. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you smash that like button and check out the cards in the top right hand corner of this video. There you'll find a playlist to more Throwback Thursdays. Leave a comment below and tell me what games that you would like to see in Throwback Thursdays. Maybe your one will be on next week. Hey, who knows? And make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss them for yourselves. Until the next video, high five a stranger. Adios.